Good evening, Trump's family. Welcome back to my channel. Have a good night, everyone, and God bless you. Alright, let's get into the news. More information leaking out about who thought it was a great idea for that Biden speech that we saw on Thursday, where he basically called half of America enemy of the state, and is willing to go ahead and give a wink wink nod nod to his foot soldiers on the ground. It's open season on MAGA. And that's what he exactly did. Well, who actually signed off on this? Well, apparently, it's Ron Klein, who's one of his White House advisor along with Joe Biden, which makes me believe that Jill probably even wrote that speech. It sounds like something she would love to say because of how vindictive she actually is and how much she hates when people call her husband, Brandon, and how people make fun of her for being his nursemaid, and everything like that. It sounded like a very vindictive woman speech from somebody on the left, who is very vindictive, and who is enjoying all the perks and metadata of being the president without having to be the president. And that's who Jill Biden is. So what we have here is coming to us from Jack Pacific. He's usually pretty spot on. With the majority of the stories he breaks and majority of stuff he tweets out, they usually end up coming true. And it's very rarely that he's ever really way off basis, and this is right there. This is right here, where he tweets out. Jill and Ron both signed off on the red sermon per White House staff. And this was from Thursday. Not surprising at all that Jill would have had a hand in this, because Jill hasn't handled everything that Joe does. Joe can't do anything without Jill being present, and making sure she guides him or the questions that he takes or who's he allowed to talk to, or anything like that, as a group effort within the White House to continue to keep Joe on the tracks the best they can. Jill, in my opinion, I believe that she may have had a huge hand or influence on writing of that speech that was presented to the nation as a unity speech on the soul of the nation, as Biden called it, as he was being heckled from the wall. Where based Americans were like, let's go Brand and write or F Joe Biden, as they were saying that to him. Absolutely. That tone of that speech has Jill's fingerprints all over it from this vindictive first lady who thinks that she is the actual president of the United States, as why she had her husband continuing to run even in his current vegetable state. She wanted that power, she wanted to be there hobnobbing with all of the leaks, that's what she wanted. And that's what she was willing to sell her soul for. And next news, how many coincidences can there be until it's a clear trend, until it's no longer a coincidence, it's just what it is. And I'm speaking in reference to, of course, the Black Lives Matter organization. And in particular, the same BLM organization that Patrice Ken Cullors is a county founder of, because of course, there's hundreds of different BLM organizations, but the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation is the biggest one. That's the one that's always under scrutiny. And of course, with good reason, the same question that we have been asking throughout this entire time: where did the money go? If you raise $90 million, that's a whole lot of money. You know what you could do with $90 million? You give me $90 million. And I can easily make 10 to 15% clean on that money every single year just through basic investments and real estate development. And of course, that's very modest. You could make a whole lot of money with $90 million, because it allows you to produce here in a totally different world. When you have that kind of access to capital, you could create infrastructure, make buildings, renovate parks, and communities and basketball courts. You could do so much good. We're not talking about chump change. And so that's why it's a legitimate question. Where's the money? What have you produced? The BLM organization raised all of those funds with the explicit goal of actually doing something with it, creating something, making people's lives better, yet, I cannot point to a single thing that they have done, and neither can any left-wing activist who support the organization show me a single thing that they have created that has benefited the communities that they fundraised off. You can't do it, because the whole thing was one massive, giant, colossal, bloated scam. And another scandal emerges. Another individual involved the Black Lives Matter organization, or rather, the BLM Global Network Foundation. Well, this individual directly connected to the finance and fundraising division is now being accused of siphoning off and stealing That's 10 out of the $90 million that the organization supposedly connected. And speaking of connected, I mean, we're connecting all the dots, folks, we're starting to get the whole picture here. And already it seems as though 50%, maybe even more, I'll do the math later, or at least a rough estimate. The point is, we already know a good portion, if not close to a majority of the funds raised were used completely illegitimately. We've got some stuff to talk about as the Black Lives Matter organization continues to get exposed. Let me show you guys what's going on. So let's roll the tape. Alright friends, so take a look at this. Black Lives Matter leader stole $10 million from organization. Lawsuit says a top leader in the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation was accused in a lawsuit filed this week of stealing millions of dollars from the organization through a scheme of fraud and misrepresentation. Lawsuit filed in Los Angeles County Superior Court on Thursday by Black Lives Matter grassroots accused Shallow Maya Bowers, one of the 3 members of the group's board of directors, of stealing more than $10 million from the far-left activist group for his own personal use. The Los Angeles Times noted that Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation raises funds through donations that are then distributed to Black Lives Matter Grassroots, which is, quote, the umbrella organization for local chapters of the group. The lawsuit pinned to federal and state-level investigations into the group on Bowers' alleged actions, accusing him of using the group's funds as a, quote, personal piggy bank and causing the group irreparable harm in a mere matter of months while BLM leaders and movement workers were on the street risking their lives. Alright, Mr. Bowers remained in his cushy offices devising a scheme of fraud and misrepresentation to break the implied-in-fact contract between donors and BLM. The lawsuit said Bowers in the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation's board of directors claimed that those who filed the lawsuit were effectively racists. Interesting. They would rather take the same steps of our white oppressors and utilize the criminal legal system which is propped up by white supremacy, the same system they say they want to dismantle to solve movement disputes. The organization said, "Oh, cry me a river, give me a break." First of all, this just shows you how despicable this organization is. Take the same steps as our white oppressors and white supremacy. I mean, as a white person, this is so insulting, the constant scapegoating of my white oppressors and white supremacy. Nobody is oppressing you anytime these far-left activists get caught in their crimes. It's never their fault. It's the system's fault. It's white supremacists' fault. It's my right-wing narrative fault or right-wing conspiracy fault. You are being accused of siphoning off $10 million for Europe on personal use money that, by the way, Mr. Mawatha Presser, you mostly fundraised off of white people who are donating to your cause to make the world a better place, supposedly, and now you shove it back into people's faces when it's alleged that you might possibly have been running a scam of fraud the entire time. I mean, this is almost an admission of guilt. It borders on that. And to all the people who have attacked me and other people like me for questioning the holy Black Lives Matter, what do you have to say? Now, I've maintained the exact same stance since the start. I am not against the idea that Black Lives Matter. I am not against activism or fundraising that helps communities of color or disenfranchised people. Absolutely not. But when you are in this very unique position of fundraising and collecting all of this money to do good, just like the government does with taxpayer dollars, you better prove without a shadow of a doubt that your organization is absolutely legitimate and that this money is being used effectively. And that has been the number one issue since the start. Of course, the leftist narrative is that right? Wingers just hate Black Lives Matter because they're deeply racist and just terrible people. But of course not. It's just common sense. People who could see through all the BS. Once again, the question is, where's the money going? Well, we're able to quantify a decent amount of it. Patrice Cannon Coolers bought a $6 million home in California, as well as other personal homes. We can directly connect that to the Black Lives Matter organization. But we know that the Black Lives Matter organization dished out $6 million to buy a home that was purchased for $3.2 million by one of their finance directors like 6 days prior. And so they just doubled the price in what seems to be almost like a money laundering scheme. We know that they purchased a massive building in Toronto for $6 million, as well. That's $12 million. We know they spent over $12 million on Democrat lawyers' Democrat-connected legal consultation. That already puts us at $24 million. We know that Patrice Cannon has funneled multiple millions of dollars to her brother, her wife and various other family members. I actually believe that Sham Elia, the individual accused of stealing the $10 million here, was also given hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not mistaken, to help fund one of his businesses. But I'd have to go back and find the original article or the Daily Mail reporting. I'll probably get back to you guys on that one in another video. So anyway, is this chalk it up to just under $30 million accounted for so far, none of it used legitimately, and then add another $10 million? On top of that, we are nearing $50 million. We'll call it an even $47 million that is currently accounted for. That is half of the supposedly $90 million collected going directly into the pockets of the Black Lives Matter Global Foundation co-founder group, their family members, and of course their friends. We have been made aware of so many $1 million, and this whole thing was done under the guise as if it was a nonprofit. But these people have profited. They've profited off the dilemma and struggle of their own people. It took a very emotional situation, the passing of George Floyd, and used it to their own benefits to the extent that they started riots, vandalism, and arson. I believe over 30 people lost their lives during those riots. They created carnage and chaos and death, and then pushed for policy changes that led to the highest murder rates since the 1990s. They created an environment where more black young life has been lost almost than ever before. And they did it all while enriching themselves instead of taking that money and actually doing something with it. Like I said in the intro, they didn't even have the common decency to make a community center or a park or to start a neighborhood cleanup initiative. This stuff is truly cynical. It's despicable. And it's another one of those moments of leftist lobbying, all kinds of slanderous labels and names and ad hominems, and anybody who questions BLM. And once again, we're in the position to say I told you so, but gullible emotional Democrats getting scammed once again isn't exactly breaking news now, is it? Thank you for always watching and subscribing to the channel. Every channel subscribe is my motivation to work harder.